1 is in the books, and everything has changed. We're looking at updating the running back tier list for week 2, specifically today. We have a lot of stats now for all of the running backs from week 1. We have a lot more clarity. I did a quick little run through, made some quick edits from the week 1 tier list already, but there's lots more to break down, lots to talk about. We're going to go name by name and break down the fantasy outlook for week 2 for each of these running backs. Once we get to the C tier and D tier, you want to hear, which one of these guys should you be starting? We're going to be doing their rankings today as we go. We're starting with S tier, and S tier, you're going to see some shakeups. I did not have Jahmyr Gibbs at the number 1 spot last week, which obviously I was right, but Jahmyr Gibbs is now the top of S tier for me heading into week 2. Now you might be saying to yourself, why? Like Jahmyr Gibbs, he wasn't even that good. Well, Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 receptions for 31 receiving yards. The worst receiving yards per 10 receptions in NFL history. That is an actual stat. You guys can go check that out yourself. Now, in terms of rushing the football, Jahmyr Gibbs was also not too effective. 9 attempts, 19 yards. Again, very, very inefficient. But he had a 15 fantasy point day in PPR because he had 10 receptions on all 10 targets. So the volume alone keeps Jahmyr Gibbs relevant. He also has a much easier matchup where they just face the Packers, who have a top defense in the league potentially. They take on the Chicago Bears, who I'm watching right after this on Monday Night Football. We're going to see how the Bears defense can contain Jordan Mason and Aaron Jones. But as of right now, I like Gibbs in the top of S tier. I know it's a bit aggressive. Maybe Bijan, maybe McCaffrey can slide in. And I'm going to go through the tier first, and then we'll probably slide some guys around within the tier. So I'm going to do Bijan next. So we're going to see, can Bijan go above Jahmyr Gibbs? Now, with Bijan Robinson, his stats are a bit inflated, but they're a bit, they deserve to be. What do I mean by that? He had a 50-yard reception to start the game off. So he had 6 receptions on 7 targets, 100 receiving yards, and the tutty receiving the football. On the ground, pretty inefficient day. 12 carries, 24 yards. Now, he did highly outsnap Tyler Algier. I believe Algier only had like 12 rushing plays or 12 snaps, whereas Bijan had like 30 plus in terms of snaps. So Bijan was the clear alpha there. And I'm actually going to make a decision here. With the Drake London injury news, I know Darnell Mooney might come back. Darnell Mooney's dealing with a shoulder. He was obviously a game time scratch. I think Bijan without Drake London is going to be the main focal point of that Falcons offense. So I actually like bumping him up. They play the Minnesota Vikings, again, a team I haven't seen on Monday Night Football, but I like Bijan ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs, still in S tier, both these guys. Now, Christian McCaffrey has a chance, in my eyes, to go ahead of Bijan. Let's break down what McCaffrey did against the Seahawks in week number 1. 23.2 PPR points. He had 22 rushes for 69 yards. Not efficient, but more efficient than Bijan and Jahmyr Gibbs both. And he was healthy. He had 10 targets as well, and that's where he was efficient. 9 receptions for 73 yards. He had 23.2 points with no touchdown. Oh my God, they take on the New Orleans Saints. George Kittle's probably out. That bumps him up ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs in my eyes. And Christian McCaffrey is back on the top of S tier where he belongs when healthy. So CMC is a clear, he might be in S plus tier. He might be in a tier of his own with the usage we saw in week 1. Now, they use B-Rob Jr. in between the sticks, but you're not concerned about that moving forward. Saquon Barkley, I also have in S tier for the time being. The Eagles, they came out with the game plan that we saw last year. It was their Super Bowl winning strategy, so obviously they didn't change it. I like having Saquon in S tier still. He had 18 carries for 60 yards and a tutty. He was also involved in the receiving game, which was nice to see. 5 targets, caught 4 of them for 24 yards. Looking at the matchup here, they play the Kansas City Chiefs, though. So, based on week 1 alone, I'm actually inclined maybe we bump Saquon ahead of Jahmyr Gibbs. The reason I'm not going to do it is based on the week 2 matchup. Saquon versus the Chiefs. The Chiefs contained him in the Super Bowl. I think Saquon could have a solid day. I'm still going to put Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of him for now because the Lions, bit of an easier matchup. Bill Crosby, I did that for the memes. We'll cover him later. So that's S tier for week 2. A tier, these are all guys that are going to start, so it doesn't really matter how we rank them specifically. But the reason we're going through name by name is so I can break down, what they did in week 1 and give you their matchup for week 2. So Chase Brown, he had 13.1 fantasy points, and to be honest, it was the best outcome for Chase Brown, even though he had a down day. This guy handled all of the running back snaps. Not a single other running back was involved. Samaje Perine the backup, which just proves how relevant Chase Brown is. 21 carries, 43 yards for a touchdown. Trash efficiency. Only 3 targets, 2 catches for 8 yards. So he had a really bad day, but I think the Bengals offense bounces back in a big way versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. There's a chance I bump him down these rankings. We're going to see the other matchups that we have coming up here. We have Ashton Jeanty, and it's a similar story here. Now, the Raiders play the Chargers for some reason on 10 p.m. On Monday Night Football. Really weird. But Jeanty had 12 fantasy points. He had 19 carries for 38 yards and a touchdown, 2 targets, 2 catches, 2 yards. So, again, very inefficient from his debut. I am going to keep Jeanty behind Chase Brown this week, but he should be in A tier. Devon Achane. Devon Achane was the Miami Dolphins offense, and, he might be the highest projected running back heading into week 2. He had 16.5 fantasy points, only 7 carries, but he was efficient, 55 yards on those carries, 4 targets, 3 catches for 20 yards. Now, Devon Achane plays the New England Patriots. Now, what's interesting about that is if we look at last year versus the New England Patriots, he dropped 21 points the last time they played each other. Now, earlier in the season, he only dropped 2 points, but that was a whole different story. And when he most recently played them, he had 10 carries, 32 yards, not very efficient, 3 catches, 24 yards, but he had 2 receiving touchdowns, which boosted him up to over 20 when they played them last year in week 12. So that's just an interesting note there. I think Devon Achane should slide ahead of Ashton Jeanty. The Miami Dolphins offense is so bad in terms of receivers. Tyreek's banged up, Jalen Waddle's banged up. They're both unhappy. If Devon Achane's healthy, I think that he's going to have to be a focal point, especially in the receiving game. We could see more than 4 targets this week. Achane versus Chase Brown's a bit of a wash for me. I'm going to put Chase Brown ahead of him for now. I like the Jaguars matchup a bit better than Dolphins versus Patriots. Jonathan Taylor. Jonathan Taylor is a big riser in a lot of people's rankings, and he's a solid riser in mine as well. Again, he handled the majority of snaps. So while from a fantasy day, it wasn't great. 18 rushes, 71 yards. That's efficient. Almost 4 yards per carry. 3 catches on 3 targets for 27 yards. Pretty efficient. He handled the major chunk of work. Now, obviously, they were able to use DJ Giddens. Don't look at the snap data because they were up by a lot. Jonathan Taylor is going to bump ahead of Ashton Jeanty in my rankings. Now, he doesn't have the same receiving usage as these guys, so it's, I can't bump him up much higher, but encouraging signs for JT. Bucky Irving. Bucky Irving is a big riser as well. Rachaad White was completely dusty. Bucky Irving clearly outsnapped him. He clearly now is the lead back. He had 14 carries for 37 yards, 4 catches for only 8 yards, but he had all 4 catches on 4 targets. And the Buccaneers honestly can take another step forward in week 2 to take on the Houston Texans, who are a dirty defense. So I don't like the matchup, which is why I'm going to keep Bucky Irving a bit behind some of these other guys. Derrick Henry. This is where the rankings have to get updated, right? So Derrick Henry drops 30 points, 18 rushes, 170 yards, and a lot of that came in the first half. 2 touchdowns, added a reception too for 13 yards. Derrick Henry in week 2 takes on the Cleveland Browns. A bit of a tough matchup, but how can you have Derrick Henry behind some of these other guys? In fact, I'm going to put Derrick Henry at the top of A tier. He's a big riser for me in terms of running backs. Now, Josh Jacobs is a bit of a faller for me. I had him pretty conservatively ranked in week 1, which I'm glad. He salvaged his day with a touchdown. He had 14 fantasy points, 19 carries, 66 yards, only 1 reception for 4 yards. So he was decently efficient. He kind of gained his steam later on in the game when they were, ground and pound, already winning by a lot against Detroit. Thursday Night Football matchup versus the Washington Commanders. Don't love the matchup. I think the Packers might be forced to pass a little bit more than expected, but Josh Jacobs honestly can't do much worse. He has like a 9-game touchdown streak as well. So I do like Josh Jacobs in A tier. B tier, again, we have the right to change these tiers as we go. That's why we're doing this. We got Kyren Williams for now. Kyren Williams, 14 fantasy points, 18 carries, 66 yards, and a touchdown. 2 targets, 1 catch for 3 yards. The Rams offense will improve. The Rams offense is a good offense. There's a chance. What I'm going to do? I'm going to bump Josh Jacobs down to B tier just to kind of even this thing out. I think that these guys might be in a class of their own. I think Jacobs and Kyren can both be in this class, but I want these guys to earn it a bit. So I actually like Jacobs and Kyren where they are. Kyren has a matchup versus the Tennessee Titans. A bit of an easier matchup in mind. We just saw Dobbins. We just saw Harvey kind of rake against those guys. I'm actually going to bump Kyren ahead of Jacobs for this week 2. An interesting note in the tier list. Alvin Kamara. Alvin Kamara in Alvin Kamara fashion salvaged his day with a rushing touchdown late, 11 carries, 45 yards, and a touchdown against the Arizona Cardinals. He added only 2 targets and 2 receptions for 12 yards. Spencer Rattler had 40-plus pass attempts and only 2 targets to Kamara. That's not a good sign. Now, they take on the San Francisco 49ers. Charbonnet had a decent day, but I'm still going to keep Kamara down here in B tier. It's going to be Kamara versus CMC. Interesting game. James Cook is the next name we got to talk about. James Cook had a solid day, really solid day against the Baltimore Ravens. James Cook did cook 21 fantasy points, a touchdown on the ground, 44 rushing yards, 5 receptions for 60 yards. That is what you like to see right here. I'm actually going to go ahead and bump James Cook up a whole tier, and I'm actually going to bump James Cook. I'm going to put him ahead of Josh Jacobs again. I think him and Kyler are kind of interchangeable going into this next week. They have a solid matchup versus the New York Jets. I mean, Jalen Ward had double-digit fantasy points. James Cook is going to as well. Speaking of the Jets, we got Breece Hall. Again, the Breece Hall Jets are taking on the Buffalo Bills. The Buffalo Bills look good. Derrick Henry just ran for 170 yards. Breece Hall is coming off a 100-plus yard game. I'm going to bump Breece Hall up into B tier as well. We got some risers in the running back rankings. He was the clear lead RB. All the camp reports must have been fake. Now we get to C tier. So we have 3, 6, 9, 12. We have 14 running backs ranked. Now we're looking at guys that are RB2 and kind of flex play consideration, but you're still going to be starting these guys most likely. So Chuba Hubbard, we have to break down. Chuba Hubbard takes on the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals, so Chuba Hubbard dropped 18 points. He was the clear workhorse back. He had 5 targets, 3 receptions, 32 yards, 57 rushing yards. He had a solid day. He had a receiving touchdown as well to kind of bump him up to 18 fantasy points. I like him where he is. We got James Conner, and while James Conner was highly inefficient, Trey Benson looked better. James Conner salvaged his day with a receiving touchdown. I think James Conner has to go up. Why? Because the Carolina Panthers just gave up 150 yards to Travis Etienne. So bad. The Carolina Panthers rushing defense was terrible. Etienne feasted. What do we think James Conner's going to do? Now, this is a statement ranking. Honestly, it might be smarter to have Chuba ahead of him, but I'm not doing that. I'm putting James Conner for a rebound game, and he's going to need one against he's due for one against the Panthers. Omarion Hampton. People said I had him too low last week. Well, you were wrong. He had 8 fantasy points. Averaged about 3 yards per carry. Had a big rookie mistake going into half. Cost him 3 points. 2 catches on 2 targets for 12 yards. What you'll like to see here with Hampton is the snap data. I think Najee only had 12 snaps in that Friday Night Football game. Hampton had like 30 plus. So I like the usage. There's better days ahead here, but they were a very good passing attack offense. Hopefully Hampton gets some goal line carries in a better matchup against the Las Vegas Raiders. So I'm going to keep Hampton where he is. I'm tempted to put him up here ahead of Chuba and Conner, but again, I'm going to make him prove it. Tony Pollard is kind of a riser in my eyes. He did exactly what I expected him to do. He had all of the volume. You know, this guy had all of the carries. Tony Pollard, 18 carries for 60 yards, 1 reception for 30 yards. Now, he didn't have a touchdown, which kind of reduced his fantasy output, his fantasy points, but he played decent in my eyes. They play the Rams. I'm going to keep Tony Pollard where he is. Kenneth Walker. Do we drop Kenneth Walker in the rankings? Kenneth Walker did not have the best day. Like Zach Charbonnet actually was the one getting the rushing usage. Zach Charbonnet was the one getting the touchdown. So Kenneth Walker had 5 points, 10 carries for 20 yards, 3 catches for 4 yards. Highly inefficient. They take on the Pittsburgh Steelers. Now, Breece Hall just had a pretty solid day against them. I am bumping down Kenneth Walker down here. I'm going to bump him down into D tier for now. I mean, we'll see where I'm going to put him. Travion Henderson, also, I don't feel like he belongs. Like, Ramondre Stevenson out-snapped Travion Henderson in a big way, but Henderson did still have 11 fantasy points, 5 carries for 27 yards. Efficient. 6 targets, 6 catches for 24 yards. The Alvin Kamara role. Now, there's definitely a world where he belongs in D tier. He's just better. He's Alvin Kamara. PPR formats, he's very, very good. So I like the outlook here. They take on the Miami Dolphins. I think they're going to have a lead potentially if the Dolphins play bad again. I'm keeping him where he is. This is kind of his last chance. Like, he salvaged the performance. I'll keep him here. But, I'm scared. Ramondre is a big, big, big pest. So, I mean, it might take a couple weeks for him to blossom. If you have him, you're probably a bit nervous. Now, Javonte Williams is going to be an interesting one. Javonte Williams is somebody that came out and had the 2 touchdowns against the Philadelphia Eagles. They take on the New York Giants. I think the Cowboys are going to feast. He had 3.6 yards per carry, 54 rush yards, 3 targets, 2 catches. I'm going to put Javonte up here in C tier. I think he's definitely somebody you start against the New York Giants. Isaiah Pacheco, people are saying, is a big-time faller. You're probably right. Like, Pacheco was not good. He didn't have, he had like 30 snaps. Kareem Hunt had like 20, so they were sharing, splitting the backfield. 5 rushes for 25 yards, only 3 targets, only 2 catches. Again, another person that's kind of a big-time faller. I'm going to bump him and Kenneth Walker down in these rankings. Jaylen Warren had a solid day. Jaylen Warren was the clear running back 1 for the Pittsburgh Steelers, followed by Kenneth Gainwell. 14 fantasy points, 11 carries, 37 yards, only 2 catches. I mean, Kenneth Gainwell kind of stole some of that role. Now, the Pittsburgh Steelers take on the Seattle Seahawks. I think it's a decent matchup. I'm going to put David Montgomery and him kind of side by side. Montgomery had an interesting day, not very efficient. He had some receiving usage and, no touchdowns. So it was all right for David Montgomery. Honestly, it was kind of encouraging seeing his usage. He was able to get 8.3 points, 11 carries, and 4 catches. I mean, I'm going to put Warren ahead of him. I'm going to put Montgomery probably somewhere ahead of Pacheco. And I'm going to put Walker, honestly, ahead of him. I think Walker, we're going to give him one more chance. I'll keep Warren where he is. DeAndre Swift, I have not seen DeAndre Swift yet on Monday Night Football. We will see if DeAndre Swift performs well. He could honestly move up to as high as probably right here, but that's probably the highest he'd be able to move. So we're going to have Aaron Jones. Again, same story. I have the right to bump these guys up in their tier. RJ Harvey has to be a faller. He did not have the same amount of opportunities as J.K. Dobbins. J.K. Dobbins, new addition to the board. He had 15 fantasy points, 16 rushes, 63 yards, and a touchdown. Also added 2 receptions. We're going to swap places. We're going to send RJ Harvey down into irrelevant land. We're going to put Dobbins up in here. Travis Etienne is where things get interesting. How the hell do you rank Travis Etienne? Tank Bigsby had no usage at all in the first quarter. Travis Etienne had 16 carries for 150 yards. Insane. And he also added 3 catches. They take on the Cincinnati Bengals and the Bengals' trash rush defense. This feels risky. I'm throwing Etienne up here in C tier. I might regret it, but I'm putting him up there. It's a big, big, big time riser. Tyrone Tracy had a terrible, terrible day. They take on the Dallas Cowboys. I'm going to keep Tyrone Tracy where he is in D tier. I know people are going to probably want him to bump down, but it's a good matchup for the Giants, I think, to bounce back. The Commanders had them bottled up. It's a bad offense for the Giants, though, so that's going to hurt Tracy all year long. Jordan Mason, I've not yet seen. Again, right to reserve for where those guys end up. Zach Charbonnet. Zach Charbonnet did have a solid game against the 49ers. 11 fantasy points, 12 carries for 50 yards and a touchdown. Interestingly, based on the college profile, you'd expect Charbonnet to be more involved as a receiver than Kenneth Walker. It was actually the opposite. But I am going to have Charbonnet down here in E tier, kind of like a streamer type option. Honestly, once we get to E tier, I'm not too excited about starting these guys. Austin Eckler, if we take a look at Eckler, he was involved. Only 6 rush attempts for 30 yards, only 3 catches. Again, not looking forward to starting him. I'm putting Caleb Johnson in irrelevant land. I'm putting Judkins. Honestly, do not start Quinshon Judkins, but I will have him here. Don't start RJ Harvey, but I'll have him here. Nick Chubb. People are going to be tricked into thinking that Nick Chubb is decent. He only had 6 points. He had 13 carries for 60 yards. Oh my God, he's insane. He had 0 catches. I mean, he's going to need a touchdown to actually do something relevant in your starting lineup. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. 10 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown. No catches. I'm going to do what the people want. The people want Bill Crosby higher up in the rankings. I'm going to put Bill up here in D tier. He's a riser. Had a solid game. We'll put him up here in D tier. I think he is somebody you can potentially flex for the week. Now, another name we have to add is Dylan Sampson. I would put Dylan Sampson ahead of Nick Chubb, ahead of Judkins, ahead of Eckler, ahead of behind Charbonnet. This is where I guess I'm putting him ahead of Zach Charbonnet. 8 catches for 60 yards is crazy, and they're going to ease Quinshon Judkins back in most likely. He hasn't practiced once, guys. Jerome Ford is an absolute bum. We're going to put him down here in F tier. Don't be starting him. Bigsby's down there. Trey Benson is in F tier, but he's an elite handcuff type back. B-Rob Jr. is down there somewhere. Najee is down there. Ramondre might honestly be in E tier. Like, the role he had was kind of interesting. The rest of these guys don't really deserve to be ranked. Now, I'm going to make sure real quick that we didn't miss anyone. I don't really think so. Yeah, so this is going to be the list. Like, do we rank Kenneth Gainwell? Gainwell had 7 carries for 20 yards. He added 3 catches. Honestly, Gainwell will be somewhere probably in F tier. I'm not starting him. I'm not starting Kareem Hunt. So this will be the running back list for week 2. Hope this helped you boys out considering who to start in your running back spots and also flex. We'll have wide receiver rankings, tight end, defense, quarterback. Hope you boys enjoyed the video. Smash the like and subscribe button. Please help us out as a small channel. And leave a comment, man. Show some support. Thanks.